here clubbing unless they pay the nigga.
What's good, everybody? What's good? It's your boy Cardinal Bud Crawford, or E.S. Red, if that's what you want to call me. And we are back for another one. Alright, y'all. New topic. Terence Crawford's retirement. Nothing else to accomplish if no Spence fight happens. Alright, y'all. So, should Terence Crawford just give up? You know, he's accomplished pretty much everything you could accomplish as a boxer, other than going up and trying for multiple weight classes. He's already conquered a few weight classes. 130, 140, 147. He hasn't been unified at all of those classes, but he has been undisputed at one, unified at another, and he won a title at 147. You know, so he's accomplished quite a bit as a professional fighter. More than the average fighter, you know, more than the average star fighter. He's accomplished quite a bit. Most boxers don't ever hit that undisputed status, so that is a great accolade to hang your hat on. No matter what weight class it's at, you know, whether it's 140, 130, 147, it doesn't matter where it was at. He accomplished something big in the sport of boxing. Now, is that the end all be all? Is that the greatest that he could ever achieve in the sport of boxing? No, there's plenty more for him to accomplish in the sport. The problem is the sport has severely changed over the past few years. It's not the same as it was, and you can't expect to get every fight that you want. You can't expect to make every dollar that you feel like you deserve in the sport, and it's going to be difficult for him, I think, to overcome this Errol Spence Jr. situation. I don't think he survives that situation with a title belt or becomes undisputed. I think he gets beat. I think he gets beat decisively and convincingly, and it's going to end up retiring anyway. So I'm not surprised that if he can't get this fight made, that he's hinting at retirement anyway. I keep telling y'all this might be his cash out fight, simply because if he loses, I think he's going to get a lot of backlash anyway. I think if he loses, you're not going to see any promoters trying their hardest to go sign him. He could possibly get signed with another promotional company if he loses, but it's not going to be as lucrative as what he was doing with Bob Arum, and it's not going to be as lucrative as whatever he gets out of this Spence fight. So for all the people saying that I'm relegating him to a journeyman if he gets beat by Errol Spence Jr., it's not me relegating him to a journeyman. It is the boxing world relegating him to a journeyman. The people who are actually going to be paying him are going to downgrade him down to a journeyman, because they're not going to want to pay him $5 million per fight if Errol Spence Jr. beats him. And more than likely there'll probably be a rematch, so he'll have 2 losses on his record. Still be a great fighter, but with 2 losses on his record. And it changes the dynamic of things. It changes the popularity. It changes how many people want to purchase your fights, how many people are interested in your fights. So if he can't actually make the Errol Spence Jr. fight, would it be smarter for him to go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to retire as an undefeated fighter? Not too many fighters get to retire on top, undefeated, and with a title belt. You know, that would make him, that would cement him pretty high in the boxing legacy record books, because I don't think there are too many other fighters who can say they actually did that. Seems like most fighters, once they get to a certain point in their career, they start to push things. You know, they don't stop when they need to stop. You know, sometimes less is more, you know, because it makes your legacy look that much better if you don't have any loss. We know Floyd Mayweather retired with no losses. Depends on who you ask. But he technically retired with no losses. But I'm not sure if Mayweather held a title belt at the time he retired. I actually don't think he did hold an actual title belt at the time he retired. And he could have, if he would have took on some mandatory challengers, which he didn't do. And he dropped titles so he wouldn't have to take on mandatory challenges. So, I mean, I think it depends on the situation for Terence Crawford, because he can still go up to 154, get a Charlo fight. And I actually think at 154, Terence Crawford has a better chance of getting a Charlo fight than Errol Spence does because of their friendship. You know, I'm not sure if Errol Spence actually tries to fight Charlo based off their friendship. You know, there's been said in the past that they wouldn't fight each other because of the friendship. Now, if the money's right, friendship goes out the window. You know that. So, it's not like he doesn't have options beyond 147. And it's not just that he has to make the Errol Spence Jr. fight for him to not retire. There's still Keith Thurman out there. There's still Jerron Ennis out there. There's still Virgil Ortiz out there. The Keith Thurman fight is winnable. I think depending on the circumstances and what version of Keith Thurman comes to the ring that day, the Jerron Ennis and the Virgil Ortiz fights are losable. And losable fights are risky fights. Whether, you know, he got into the ring with him and actually beat him, there's still the possibility that he loses that fight. So, would he rather retire or risk losing a fight? You know, that's completely up to him. And the risk of those two fights outweigh the reward, because it's not going to be a lot of money. You would get a lot of fanfare, because I think a lot of people want to see Jerron Ennis and Virgil Ortiz get tested before they mark them the real deal. And the only measuring sticks for tests out there are Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford. Now, Manny Pacquiao has thrown his name into the mix a little bit, but hasn't really fully come out and said he's ready to come out of retirement yet. It's just been hinting around a Crawford fight. So it's not like those two guys can face, Virgil Ortiz or Boots can face up with someone like a Pacquiao to prove themselves for the future. It's possible, but it hasn't been talked about. So I would think, you know, because of the options Terence Crawford has, I would say retirement is 50-50. I would say it's 50-50 because he does have the possible 154 fight that he can make, and it's 50-50 on the other side going toward retirement because of Boots and Virgil being the mandatories he would have to face up with at 147. Now, his only out, if he doesn't get the Errol Spence Jr. fight, would be to go fight Keith Thurman. That could be a potential out, because I think the Thurman fight is winnable for him. So if he wanted a winnable fight just to stay active, there's Thurman out there, and he could, if he was to secure that before Errol Spence Jr. did, then, you know, that's a winnable fight for him. Gives him another 6 to 8 months. Perhaps they can make the Errol Spence Jr. undisputed fight for the end of 2023 or mid 2023 instead of this year, if they can't get the Errol Spence Jr. fight done. But then there's the big fish out there that nobody likes to talk about, but who's still out there, who said if the negotiation falls apart, he will be negotiating with Terence Crawford, and that is Manny Pacquiao. So he has an ace in the hole. He has Keith Thurman out there as an out of the Jerron Ennis or the Virgil Ortiz fight. Will he actually try to negotiate with Pacquiao? That's to be seen and to be discussed in the future, but it has been hinted at. So he has options. I think it's a 50-50 shot at retirement if his thing falls apart. Realistically, I don't think he retires. I think he goes with one of those other options in the meantime, and maybe in 2023 you really see the talk ramped up around retirement if Spence is still hardballing him in negotiation, because the problem with pushing it out into 2023 is them Boots and Virgil truly come into play, and those guys are going to be even stronger and better once 2023 comes into play. So it'll be a hard and long road for Terence Crawford to have to hold if he keeps stalling in the negotiation process. And what I mean by stalling is he could have just accepted what was put on the table already and fought Errol Spence, but since he wants to keep playing hardball on his own end and negotiating further, eventually, if those fights don't happen, the sanctioning bodies will step in and something is going to happen. Let me know what y'all think about that down in the comment section below. Hit that like button for me. Share. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Holler at me on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. More than likely to get a response on YouTube, so holler at me over there if you want a response. It's your boy Cardinal Bud Crawford, or S Red, if that's what you want to call me. And I'm done rambling for now. Yeah. And we are mighty.
My mama say, baby, you a winner, not a quitter.